2. Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. Man, there are so many pleasures in the fact that Lamar Jackson is playing like Michael Jordan right now. The best part is any of my football buddies, and I have a pretty extensive little black book and Rolodex of old schoolers, that when I want to call them to talk about Lamar Jackson, they are very, very giddy to do that. Clark Judge has been a friend of ours for a long time and a partner in the Talk of Fame network, where they write and talk about the history of football and the magnitude and the measurement of things and do things that John Harbaugh hates the most, which are comparisons, because all we do is compare. And I recently said, why does he hate comparisons so much when all we do is compare things? I compared chicken sandwiches in Covington, Kentucky the other day, and now we're comparing Lamar Jackson to whom, Clark Judge? Whom over the 40 years of covering football does he remind you of?
Boy, that's a good question. I mean, I'm writing something about Randall Cunningham with Lamar Jackson, but Randall Cunningham was a bigger guy, and not as fluid running, but he was, elusive. Michael Vick was very elusive running. We hadn't seen anything like him. A little bit wilder throwing, very inaccurate guy, but let's face it, Lamar Jackson last year was very inaccurate. Suddenly he's a different passer. I think more Michael Vick, but this guy is built differently. He's used differently. They didn't have RPOs then. So Randall sort of made it up as he went and said, Michael Vick, he pulled the ball down after one read and go, and we've tough to get. I covered Steve Young, very different quarterback, but Steve Young was among the best running quarterbacks ever. Now, he was a much more accurate passer than Randall Cunningham, much more accurate passer than any of these guys, that Michael Vick, Cam Newton, and Lamar Jackson. I mean, Steve Young was one of the most accurate passers and became one of the most accurate
but
passers.
Still wanted to pass in short space and still wanted to find tight ends and had streaking, yards after the catch kind of wide receivers, right?
Yeah, it was a whole different offense. But he'd pull it down and take off. And for people to say, well, geez, come on, that was like 25 years ago. Run some of the video. Just run some of the video of this guy. Now, he might not have beaten Lamar Jackson in a 40, and I guarantee he probably wouldn't have, or Michael Vick. But, boy, you talk about elusive. And there's a game against the Minnesota Vikings where about 10 guys had a shot. I mean, went right through him. But Steve Young was a great running quarterback. But there have been others. And so, to me, when I first think of probably think of Michael Vick, but built differently, used differently. This guy's extraordinary. He's an extraordinary talent. Fun to watch, a lot of fun to watch. My question is, and always has been, Esther, how long is this going to last? Because at some point, he's going to suffer an injury, and it could be an RG3 injury because he was that kind of quarterback, but RG3 lasted until Haloti Ngata ran into him, and that was it.
But can't you say that about Matt Ryan? Can't you say that at some point somebody's going to... Maybe not Tom Brady because of the way they protect him up and the way that he identifies things that no 22-year-old quarterback has or will, or other than Peyton Manning, will ever understand the game at that level or call the game at that level. And they're not being asked to call that game, that kind of game at the college level, right?
Well, the answer is no, and to your question, because Matt Ryan doesn't pull the ball down and run 27 times a game or 25 times a game. He wants to be in the pocket. He's back. He's hitting the pocket. Can he get hurt? Sure, he can get hurt, and he has been hurt. Tom Brady's one of the most mobile quarterbacks out there. Within the pocket, he doesn't run with the ball. He knows where the pressure comes. Watch him slide and move within the pocket. One of the best I've ever seen. Peyton Manning was good at that, but Tom Brady, to me, is extraordinary at that. He seldom gets hit hard. He gets rid of the ball quickly, and so he avoids the direct hits that way. When you pull the ball down as much as Lamar Jackson does, or they run a RPO as much as they do, you're going to take more hits than Brady or Ryan would in 3, 4, maybe 5 weeks. And so those add up. And at some point, you're going to get hit from somebody or somewhere, or hit by somebody from somewhere that you don't expect. And again, I go back to RG3 in 2012, his rookie year, when he was lighting it up and people saying, we haven't seen anything like this before. Of course we had, but we hadn't seen it in that measure, especially in Washington. And then Ngata hit him, and he was out. Then he comes back for the playoffs. Seattle game, we know what happened. He was never the same.
He is Clark Judge. You can follow along at the Talk of Fame Network, as well as our partnership on the weekends, Clark Judge TOF, the way to follow him, as well as his various pursuits of the Montreal Canadiens and sometimes the Yankees, although not much this time of the year, and we're appreciative of that.
Go.
Okay,
Go.
so I covered Randall Cunningham late in his career when he came to Baltimore. I actually, and I want to apologize for this because I sort of mixed up his off-the-field sort of rumor-rama with Whitney Houston with Michael Vick, and Michael Vick was dogs, and Randall Cunningham was a little bit more about hot tubs and not discovering defenses and Rex Ryan and whatnot back in the day. Then Randall was cutting marble, and Randall found the Lord, and then Randall wound up with Brian and here and all that. So Randall had his own, journey. But do you remember the play, you know the one I'm talking about, where, guys bounced off his kneecaps at the vet? Where were you when that play happened?
Yeah, that's the Giants.
Were you at the game that night, or were you watching it that night?
I was not. No, I was covering the Chargers, and I remember watching the Monday night game, and he's rolling right, and he bounces off of, I'm trying to think who it was. I don't know. I don't think it was LT. It might have been. But, that was a memorable moment. In fact, when we were doing the 100 greatest moments, that was one of those things that they had us voting on. That was one play. I put it reasonably high, not that high, but that was sort of a testament to how great this guy was in terms of being tough to take down and elusive, because he could pull the ball down and run like a running back, or he could stand in there and take the shot. Thing about Randall, I remember, is when they played, I'm talking about the Philadelphia Eagles, and he was rolling, and this must have been 1989 playoffs. The Rams come to town, and Fritz Shermer was the defensive coordinator. I'll never forget what he said. Our goal going into this game is to keep Randall Cunningham in the pocket. We're going to keep him in the pocket, and that's the way we're going to beat him. And I remember Vito Stellino, who used to work at the Baltimore Sun, and he was at the Morning Sun when I was at the Evening Sun in the 80s, he said to me, can you imagine any defensive coordinator saying about Johnny Unitas, we're going to beat him by keeping him in the pocket? He said, you get beaten by guys who are staying in the pocket. And what does that tell you about Randall Cunningham? And what it told you was he was much better throwing on the run. When he was confined to the pocket, he was pretty inaccurate, and that was true. And it turns out the Rams beat him. They kept him in the pocket, and they beat him, and they ended up going on eventually to lose to San Francisco in the conference championship game. But I thought that was pretty interesting.
Clark, I love talking sports with you. First off, Clark Judge here, because you've really shaken something out of my tree. First off, I was at that football game. It happened on Christmas Eve. Jim Everett was the winning quarterback of that.
That's right.
I had Jim Everett on at the Super Bowl, maybe in Atlanta last year, or maybe Minnesota. I think it was Atlanta, and I brought it up with him. I was an Eagles season ticket holder during Gang Green and during Buddy Ryan and during Rich Kotite, because we didn't have a football team here, right? When the Colts up and left after you left, Clark Judge, and you went out to San Diego sunning yourself back for that period of time. But the Cunningham thing's amazing, because I would say to you, do you remember it? Well, of course you remember it. I remember it too. I was a little younger than you, but I was working in the business. I was at the Evening Sun at the time, late 80s. I was at Ruggiero's Crab House in Eastwood and Dundalk. It was every Monday night was taco night. Now listen, tacos were exotic in the 80s in East Baltimore, okay? We only had the Taco Bell. We didn't have any other place. So tacos on a Monday night. We had just lost the Colts. We went out every week to piss on the Colts and hope that they drafted Steve Entman or, the quarterback, Jeff George, right? So that was the years. And watching Randall Cunningham play in that game, and I was a season ticket holder for the Eagles, you don't forget, it's 30 years later. Tell me about the Lamar Jackson play on Sunday. Were you watching live? They're playing an 0-8 football team. I don't know why anybody would be watching that live, but maybe the red zone or wherever it comes to you, and you see that play, and I tell you what, 30 years later, you're writing about Randall Cunningham this week at Talk of Fame, and we're here talking about it because it is sort of generational, Clark.
Yeah, that is. No question about it. I was not watching it live. I was watching the red zone, as you talked about, but I had no interest in that game because I thought they're going to blow them out, which they ended up doing, and then it became just like, it's 35, 42. I said, okay, I've seen enough. But I did watch that play, and it was extraordinary, and it did remind me somewhat of the Steve Young run through the Minnesota Vikings defense. That was a different situation, obviously, and a different quarterback, but it reminded me much of that, and I do think 30 years from now, people saw that. We'll be talking about it much as I'm talking about Steve Young or we're talking about Randall Cunningham. The sort of signature play that you say, okay, when I think of Lamar Jackson, what comes to mind first? And that would be it. Because before this season, I'm going to be very honest with you, before this season, when I thought of Lamar Jackson, what I thought about first with the Los Angeles Chargers playoff game last year, where they said, we're going to stop you from running, beat us with a pass, and he couldn't. And that's what I remember going, God almighty, is this guy inaccurate? Until the fourth quarter when all of a sudden he started dialing into his receivers, but it was too late. But that's what I thought about until this year, and I'm watching him go through defenses. But that play stands out way above anything else I've seen of his, and probably most anything I've seen this season.
He's Clark Judge. You can follow him out on Twitter. He writes about the history of the National Football League along with Ron Borges and Goose Goslin. They're doing it out there at talkoffamenetwork.com. And you can follow him at Clark Judge TOF with his beautiful dog. And snowy afternoons at Central Park. I'm still discovering Central Park, Clark, so I'm figuring all that out. Look, the Ravens aside, and we can get back to them beating a hopeless, hapless Cincinnati team where my Uber driver on Monday morning said, we couldn't wait to run Marvin out of here. Now look at what we got. But
He's right.
I sat in my hotel room doing some post-game radio with Luke all Sunday and watched that Steelers-Rams thing. And look, we're going to see the Rams in 2 weeks. I have never been to Memorial Coliseum, so on behalf of my father, I'm really, really looking forward to that Monday night game and going out to L.A. and being a part of that. I hope the Fires are well contained at that point. We're going to get Deshaun Watson this week. We're going to see Garoppolo in 2 weeks. It's kind of an exciting thing here, but all hands on deck. Just when you think the Steelers, I said the Steelers are like snakefish, you know? You get one of them in the water and they never go away, and here they are beating the Rams. I mean, what will fight? It's like the movie Halloween, right? With the knitting of it. You know, what's going to make the Steelers die? They're going to be playing in January, Clark. It's crazy. Mike Tomlin's a witch.
Yeah, it's not crazy because that's who they are. The Steelers just don't go away. You're right. They're probably going to be playing in January. Look at their schedule the next 4 weeks. They've got Cleveland twice. They got Cincinnati. They've got Arizona. I think I added it up. It's like 7-27-1. I think they'll lose one of those two Cleveland games. I look at Cleveland now with Kareem Hunt. They've got weapons galore. Unfortunately for them, there's only one football, and because Baker Mayfield is not playing very well, they may be their own worst enemy. But Pittsburgh is a nightmare right now, not because of Mason Rudolph and not because of Juju Smith-Schuster, but because of that defense. They've become pretty good. Miami really dealt them a very, very high card when they gave them Minkah Fitzpatrick. He's changed what they do defensively. Their secondary, to me, is as good as anyone's out there. And so I think that's going to be the most interesting game, maybe one of the most interesting, I say Kansas City, New England, but in the AFC going down the stretch. Because I remember in 2013, and it was following that 2012 season with Kaepernick and RG3, sitting down with Mike Tomlin at the owners' meetings. And people were asking questions about the Steelers and everything. And then I finally said, hey, Mike, let me ask you something. What about this RPO, Kaepernick, RG3? Are they changing the game? What happens? And he said, what happens is we've got all off-season to defend that. That's what happens. So you'll see what happens when we roll it out. That thing is not going to last. And it really didn't. I mean, really, they suddenly caught up to him, and suddenly people are going in a different direction. Now it's back because we've got mobile quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray. You've seen Mahomes take off, not quite as much, but Russell Wilson certainly. Different kind of quarterback, runs out of bounds. Very smart in terms of the way he runs. But now we're seeing it again. And so Mike Tomlin has been challenged. He's seen that in action this year. And he certainly saw it last year, but he's seen it in action this year. Now, if it's going to be a game that counts, and I think that game's going to matter, even though it's the last game of the season, I think that game's going to matter. I really want to see what he's got to defend Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens, because their other defenses, I mean, San Francisco, that's a really good defense. That's be interesting to see what they do too. But Mike Tomlin takes it as sort of a personal insult. You know, you don't outfox me, not at Baltimore, because that Baltimore-Pittsburgh series is what? Second to none, right? Nestor, it's second to none. It's the greatest series going in the NFL. I love it. I want to see what he rolls out for them. And to me, that's sort of the prelude to what you're going to see in the playoffs. You know, does he do something where others go, whoa, never thought of that? He's got a defense that can defend. Let's see how they do it.
Clark, you've been around this so long, so many coaches, so many schemes. I mean, you go back to, Shula covering the Bobby Ross stuff and the teams you've covered back in Baltimore, San Diego, and everywhere else. Mm-hmm. The way the Ravens are structured, to be able to say, after picking Hayden Hurst, we're going to deal back and take this kid. Right. We're going to completely remake our team. We're going to jettison our Super Bowl winning quarterback who's breaking down. We're going to take this massive cap hit that we know it's coming down the line on Flacco. We're going to take a chance, and then we're going to completely remake our team. We're going to give money to Willie Snead. We're going to give money to Nick Boyle. We're going to have guys who block first and bitch later. We're not going to have give me the ball, and Antonio Brown, and I got to have 14 receptions at 198 yards every week. We're not going to have running backs that are really concerned about their carries or what's going to happen. That getting an organization, a franchise to buy in, getting an owner to buy in, right? If you are the football great mind that says to your owner, to your head coach, we're going to build around this fast quarterback. To your point, I mean, yeah, we could bring up Vic, or you could bring up Steve Young, or you could bring up Randall Cunningham, maybe to some degree Kaepernick, and I guess that's where I'm leading you into the conversation, to say what they've done here to build around him, to commit to him instead of the other way around, which every team goes to Indianapolis, with what they're looking for, that robo quarterback, that next generation Cam Newton kind of big giant guy. This isn't it, and the Ravens were the ones that dipped their toe in the water with the last pick of the first round, and now everybody's flocking to them to say, how are you smelling? And it feels like the Ravens are on to some generational weird thing right now.
But why is anyone surprised? I mean, that was Ozzie Newsome's last draft, and from what I understand, Eric DeCosta came to him at the bottom of the first round and said, hey, listen, why don't we get back in here? And Ozzie said, yeah, let's see what we can do. There was nobody better at drafting than Ozzie Newsome. He's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame because he was a great tight end. He'd be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame because he was a great GM. He could be in both times. He did so much for that franchise. More than anything, he gave it stability, because you look at his history of first-round draft picks, or just draft picks in general, but especially first-round draft picks, he almost never, ever missed, ever. And you're right, this was out-of-the-box thinking, because keep in mind, we had Bill Polian, who's a Hall of Fame GM, saying, Lamar Jackson, I look at him as a wide receiver. Well, he wasn't the only one, but the others weren't gutsy enough to attach their name to it, a quote. He was, and now he admits he was wrong. Well, yeah, but the Ravens were the ones that said, we'll take a chance on this guy, a flyer on him, because we see something different. But that's because the Ravens have always been so good at drafting. They've always been an organization that I admire, much as I admire, honestly, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers draft pretty well, too. But there's stability there in Pittsburgh. Stability. I mean, since the late 60s, how many head coaches have you had, Nestor? 3.
Right. Well, the Patriots are the same way because they have a system. The Patriots are the same
way because of Tom Brady, because they found their guy in the 6th round. They don't have to. Tom Brady and Belichick are like Lennon McCartney. You don't have to do anything there. You just fill in around him, right? Once you've got that guy, you fill in around him. But people spend sometimes lifetimes looking for that guy. Tom Brady is that guy. He's the greatest quarterback of my lifetime of the modern era. But, I mean, Unitas to me was the greatest quarterback I ever saw. But very different era. But Tom Brady today changes everything. Belichick's got a losing record without Tom Brady. With Tom Brady, wins 80% of
But you
games.
got to put 10 other guys around him that can play in his band, right? Same thing with Peyton Manning, same thing with Tom Moore, and, all the same cast of characters that were Saturday and those people that were around them. I mean, look, the Ravens benefited from Ogden Mulatalo and Flynn during a little period of time with Jamal Lewis, right?
Sure.
Like, having one band makes the difference. It really does.
But what makes New England go and what made Indianapolis go was, and you'll hear people say it all the time, and maybe your listeners roll their eyes. I know it's true. I've been in there. I've seen it. I've talked to enough coaches that these guys elevate the play of everyone around them. If you're in the huddle, you can feel it. I've talked to guys who know about it. They hear it. When Montana was playing, they said, when you're in that huddle with Montana, he elevates the play of everyone, so that a guy like, let's say Danny Amendola or Wes Welker or Julian Edelman, just journeyman guys with any other team, or suddenly stars there. There's stars there because Brady makes them or demands that they play at a certain level, and so does Belichick. And suddenly, where you go, this is a guy who didn't do it. Chris Hogan, he didn't do much in Buffalo. Well, now he's making these great catches for the New England. Why? Because the expectations are different. Brady, like Manning, elevated the play and elevates the play of everyone around him. So when I hear people say Brady's not one of the top 10 quarterbacks, I just laugh. I go, listen, you're looking for 400-yard pass or 300-yard. You're looking for a guy who throws 5 touchdowns. That's great. You're looking for style points, guys that throw behind their back, blind, left-handed. That's great. I want someone who wins. I want a winner because that's what this game's about. And nobody wins like Tom Brady. Nobody. So if I'm taking one quarterback today, I'm pulling him out. And people say you're crazy. I'll tell you what. If I had one guy to take for the NBA ever, I'd take Bill Russell because I'm not going to lose. I'm not going to lose with him. And the same thing with Brady. And that's why I think, Lamar Jackson probably elevated the play around him. What I worry about with him, though, is what happens if and when when he gets hurt, because we know what's going to happen. Not like Brady got hurt on a low blow and they changed the rules because of that. Hasn't been hurt since. A guy like Phillip Rivers stays in there. You're going to tell me that Lamar Jackson's going to have a career like Phillip Rivers and Tom Brady where he plays 200 straight games? And the answer is no. I mean, he's an accident waiting to happen. But in the meantime, boy, is he fun to watch. And he's changed the whole dynamic there. But it took the guts of that organization and Ozzie Newsome and Eric DeCosta to make it happen. And now we're reaping the rewards. The Ravens fans are reaping the rewards, and so are NFL fans everywhere.
Clark Judge, my pal, can be found at Clark Judge TOF. That stands for Talk of Fame and the Talk of Fame Network. Who is more dynamic, Lamar Jackson or Todd Rundgren? I'm going to give you a moment to answer that, all right?
Oh, boy, no. I've got a history with Todd. Todd Rundgren. I'd go see him anywhere. I'd see Lamar Jackson on the East Coast, but I'm probably not traveling to the West Coast to see Lamar Jackson. I would to see Todd, and I have.
I have never seen Todd Rundgren in concert. I'm embarrassed to say that. I did not give a plug to my pal Gus Kolaris, who I should for the Lewis Black interview because he's in town. Gus is always with Todd Rundgren. You're always out on the road with Todd Rundgren. Whatever band he's in, doing Beatles songs, whatever it is. Todd has got one night, you and I, when I attend the Todd show, I want to go with you. I want to go with someone. It would be like you going to see a Bruce or a U2 show, kind of with me, that there's some history. And, I got some U2 stuff coming up here in a couple weeks. I've decided there's only one person more important than Lamar Jackson in my life that's out on the road, and that's Bono. And they're doing the Joshua Tree in Tokyo and Seoul, and I love noodles, and, I love traveling the world and learning. So I am foregoing Buffalo, New York, all right, on December the 8th. To be with Bono and Soul. So that's what I've got going on. But your Todd Rundgren thing, man, I've never asked you. I mean, I've known you a long time, and I see you as a Facebook friend putting some Todd up. Give me a little Todd thing for you because Todd's all over the place. You could have come into Todd anywhere along the line. Right. Most of the people I know came into him in Philly kind of early on, kind of like Springsteen. You could have came in at Born to Run. You could have came in at, the last 15 years if you're only 30 years old, right?
Yeah, I'm much older, obviously, than you, so I came into him early, right after he left Nas, and had his first album. I thought it was good. I got the second album, Ballad of Todd Rundgren. I went, this guy's a genius. It really spoke to me, and from then on, I went to see him in the fall of 1973. It was a free concert, actually, and he was with Utopia, and he split up his shows, half of him solo, 45 minutes, and then intermission, and then an hour and a half with the Utopia, and it was progressive rock. Maybe a lot of your listeners don't understand, but it was so dynamic. I said, I'm going to go see this guy again.
And your hair was longer then. I mean, it was the 70s, right?
When you kidding me, much longer. So I flew out to San Francisco in the spring. My brother was at Stanford and said, we're going to Winterland. And we did. And he put on a great show. And then my brother became a fan, and we just started seeing him. And I keep the tickets to stubs everywhere I go. I've seen him 79 times. And I saw him 4 times in the last 4 or 5 months. And your listeners probably go, oh, yeah, I know the guy who does Hello, It's Me. That's not him. All right, that's not him. He's gone through so many changes. Kind of like David Bowie. I mean, he's a guy who's a chameleon, but way ahead of the curve. And he's up for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year, which just
I hope he gets in, dude.
He should have been in 20 years ago. And if it's not as a writer or a singer, it's as a producer. And as well as anyone, some of the albums he's done. Meatloaf's Bad Out of Hell. People talk about like the band. He did Stage Fright. He did Hall & Oates. He's done so many albums. And then you go Grand Funk. We're an American band. Well, it's Todd Rundgren. Cheap Trick. Well, it's Todd Rundgren. I mean, his name is attached. XTC. It's Todd Rundgren. You hear so many groups. Well, he's in a group right now playing with the last surviving member of Badfinger. Badfinger's best album. It was done by George Harrison. Until he left, turned it over to Todd Rundgren. Baby Blue, which is a great song. Todd Rundgren produced it. He's just a genius. He's a great engineer, producer, singer-songwriter. And for him not to be in is a joke. I mean, that's why I just wrote off the Hall of Fame. I went, forget it.
I have said to people, and I will say this out loud, I've only said it a couple times, that and I've shared the video at various moments. The thing he did on Live from Daryl's house, out in Kauai, on that island, in that with the pig, and my wife and I finally made it to Hawaii. We didn't go to Kauai; we went to Maui. I turned down a chance when the Ravens had their Super Bowl parade. No one, I was syndicated. My bosses in Chicago said, "Do you want to go do the Pro Bowl, or do you want to go home for the parade?" And I said, I'm going back to Baltimore for the parade. So I did. Wow. I had never been to Hawaii before 3 weeks ago. After the Seattle game, we went to Hawaii. So I was on the west side of Maui, and all I could think about was Todd Rundgren and Daryl Hall, singing out in that waterfall. And I said, you know what? Before I die, I want to go to Todd Rundgren's house and have a luau with Todd Rundgren, mosquitoes be damned, on Kauai. So if Rundgren gets into the Hall of Fame and they're doing it up at Barclays, I will commit my $225 to go that night, no matter who else is in. And I would be a Todd is God guy on your behalf because I know of your affinity. I feel like I've really screwed up. Like the Grateful Dead, not my thing, right? Like Springsteen, early part of my life, not necessarily my thing. There have been some things, the Black Crowes and Bob Seger, and a lot of wonderful music that's come to me in my adulthood. I get the Rundgren thing. I feel like I'm way, way, way too late to the party, and it kind of bums me out because everything he's ever been associated with, I've loved. I just haven't loved him enough, and I need to, like, read Hemingway. I need to go back and discover it. I need to go back and start at the beginning, The
concert you should have seen, Nestor, speaking about Philadelphia, was when he played in Philadelphia, I think it was 10 years ago, but when they closed down the Spectrum, and so they're bringing all these acts, and Bruce Springsteen was in there. And so they brought in Philly Night, and it was the Hooters, Todd Rundgren, Hall & Oates, and the OJs came on at the end. And so the tickets, by the demand of the artist, they said, we want the tickets to be at the same price they were when the Spectrum opened. So we saw the Hooters, Todd, Hall & Oates, and the OJs in about, I'm going to guess, 4-hour, 3.5-hour
Did Tommy Conwell play a couple songs that night? Was that possible? Did Conwell play? I don't know. He should have if he didn't.
I don't know. But the cost was $6. That was the cost of the ticket. The place was sold out. They brought down the house. It was phenomenal. And, Rundgren's telling Philadelphia story. It was great. And then, of course, he produced Hall & Oates' War Babies album, and he and Daryl Hall are very close, as you mentioned. But it's funny to hear you say mosquitoes in Hawaii. I lived in Hawaii when I was a kid. Grew up there for a couple of years. They don't have mosquitoes out there. That's a nice thing. And we lived in Oahu, but Maui's a great place. I've got a friend who lives out there, and he sees him. He goes, just a regular guy. I think that's cool. But when I lived in San Francisco, he lived out in Sausalito, and he'd play in the San Francisco area. It was great to see him over there. But the thing I love about him, he's just a regular guy was a brilliant songwriter. I don't think is anymore, but just a really, really clever and imaginative guy, and that's just one of the things, either singing, songwriting, or producing.
If there's anybody in my audience that has not seen the Hall & Oates video for It Wouldn't Have Made Any Difference from the Hall, not Hall & Oates, they're live from Daryl's house. If you haven't Googled it, Google it. Please turn down the lights. Please turn up the sound, and you will find that Todd is God. So there you go. 15 minutes on Lamar Jackson, 10 minutes on Todd Rundgren. It's all proportional. He is Clark Judge. I love him, and we don't get together often enough. But, if Todd gets in, I'm in, okay?
You got it. I'll save a spot for you, but I'm not optimistic. He didn't get in last year. I've given up.
You can't give up.
Hey, they put Janet Jackson in last year, and they didn't put him in. And it provoked, I will give you this, it provoked the guy from the Cleveland Plain Dealer said, are these people insane? Todd Rundgren's not going in, and Janet Jackson is? Please, give me a break. I gave up last year.
That would have pissed Jane Scott off, the Jane Scott I knew. Like, little Cleveland Plain Dealer reference there for you. Clark, be well. Take care. We'll see you soon. And, hey, maybe we'll be playing some football here in January. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Oh, it'd be perfect. I'd love to get that. I love Baltimore. I really do.
Crab cakes on me. We'll take you over to Fadley's. He is Clark Judge. We'll be at Fadley's this week with Thiru Vignaraja. He is running for the mayor of Baltimore. Looking forward to having a long chat about prosecuting and gun violence in our city. Having lots and lots of deep chats, including with Wes Moore, which we had last week. Matt Skura this week joining us at Jennings Cafe on Tuesday night. We're going to have Josh Bynes joining us next Monday Monday night at Adams Jeep up in Aberdeen. The Ravens are in first place. Luke's out Knowings Mills. I'm talking Todd Rundgren, Lamar Jackson, and I'm wearing my Thriller shirt. Man, it's a rock and roll Hall of Fame kind of week around here. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 at WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking or banging on the drum all day.